Hey, folks.
Hey, Veer.
We've got all kind of good stuff going here. We've got a dinosaur, we've got a horse, a doggy.
Very cool.
I guess we might as well go ahead and get started. I haven't had a meeting in a couple of weeks. Had some conflicts with other company meetings, and then last week the Second Life team was all getting together in real life to chat about lots of topics, so that was fun. But we're back now and cranking away on things. Let's see. Does Alexa? Do you want to kick us off with anything?
Yeah, just a quick thing. I was looking for content, what everybody was working on. I noticed a couple of the regions have kind of become sandboxes for other users who may not know that these should be limited to Animesh. So I'm going to be adding kind of a description to the different regions and warning that we will clean them up and auto return. So just want to make sure you guys have enough room to do what you need to.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think that stuff is all on auto return, but if it's not getting auto return fast enough, we may have to boot things more manually. Let's see. So what else is going on team wise? I know that over the last several months and probably longer, we've had a lot of questions about possible rendering related work. Are we going to make changes in the graphics pipeline? Are we going to fix issues with the graphics pipeline and so forth? And I've generally been saying, well, we don't really have a lot of resources for that now. That is hopefully going to be changing. Now we do have a full-time person who's going to be working on rendering stuff now. That's Graham Linden, who some of you may be familiar with. He's worked on Second Life in the past, but has been off working on other projects for a while. But he's back on SL full time, and I'm hoping we can drag him into some of these meetings. But in the meantime, if anybody has, I don't think he's here today, but if anybody has questions, I'm always happy to pass them along. Yeah, we told him about Animesh, and he realized he had to come work on Second Life instead.
What kind of rendering stuff is he going to be working on?
I don't really have a comprehensive list. There's a bunch of things that he's been looking at as possibilities. Some of it's just kind of increasing stability and fixing bugs, but um, there's various other possible areas we could be targeting. I don't want to comment too much about those in detail right now, since there isn't really a definite plan for what's going to get worked on first. Um, Another thing Graham is going to be taking over. Some of you have heard about Project Arctan, which was a thing we'd gotten underway a while back to look into revising the rendering cost and the land impact. And as I wound up working on Animesh full time, that kind of got sidelined. Graham is going to be working on Arctan as well. So um, hopefully we make a bit more progress. I'm gonna talk a little more later about the topic of Animesh land impact, but the context here is that we've got a sort of a short-term plan for how we're going to handle things for to get Animesh out to release, but then the longer-term plan is that we're going to do more of a deep dive into updating rendering costs and land impact in general. Not just for Animesh, but for everything. And so when we get the whole Arc10 project done, that's going to include a more detailed look at all of that stuff. So let's see what else. We have Anchor here. Anchor, do you want to talk about what you're currently working on, either Bakes on Mesh or appearance service stuff?
Yeah. So hey guys, I'm Anchor. I'm working on the Bakes on Mesh project, which is like I'm supposed to be done with it the end of this quarter. Um, yeah. And then there's also this 1024 by 1024 texture update. So hopefully in the future you will be able to upload 1024 textures. Yeah. So all this stuff is like still in my list to do. Yeah, if you guys have any questions about this, just let me know. Yeah, that's all.
Sounds like it might be done about the same time that Animesh is done, huh?
Yeah, hopefully by the end of this quarter, like next couple of months. Yeah, it's gonna be done.
But this won't apply to Animesh characters, just the avatar.
But this will apply to all like all the mesh attachments. Like right now, how we have all these layers of onion, like onion avatars. So instead of those, you could just like apply the big textures like on the meshes. I mean, you won't need to have all those like different layers of like meshes. You can just have one mesh and then use the big textures from the attachments.
But yeah, it's true that wouldn't initially apply to Animesh because bakes are for avatars, and there isn't an avatar associated with each Animesh object. So to allow the appearance service to actually do bakes for Animesh objects would be an additional work that's not part of the Bakes on Mesh project itself.
I don't think that you're going to totally get rid of in my opinion, the onion mesh avatars with the Bakes on Mesh, just simply because, for instance, like makeup, there's going to be people that are going to want to apply tattoos and different blushes, different lipsticks from different content creators, etc., so forth and so on, and huh? I'm confused. So am I confused about the whole project, or? Okay, but you still have to have the same content creator making those textures, though. Am I right? Okay, but you only have the system tattoos, and then you have the system skin, and you have the system clothing layer, and that's it.
But you could make any existing texture into a system tattoo, right? So
right.
and then that becomes part of your your baked appearance, right? So you can have as many texture tattoo layers as you want, up to whatever the limit for wearables overall is. You can have a heck of a lot of tattoos potentially.
Okay, and so does the same apply to skin layers and clothing layers?
Yeah, I mean the system wearable mechanism lets you have lots of different clothing layers. You can have shirts on top of other shirts. You can have tattoos on top of other tattoos, and then that stuff all gets sorted in order based on the type of clothing it is. So potentially you can have quite a few different textures that get combined using that mechanism, all into one kind of resultant baked texture that hopefully would be more efficient. I mean, to your more general point that it isn't necessarily going to get rid of all the onion avatars, I'm sure that's true. I don't know of any technique that people have actually stopped using as a result of some new technology. I think it always gets kind of added in rather than replacing. But hopefully this will make it, it will make fewer people feel like they need to do it that way. Yeah, Beck, I think you've got a point. We really should have some kind of document that talks about this in more detail. Currently, we don't, so we're just kind of talking it through. But I think at some point we'll try to put something together like that. Alphas, yeah. I mean, you can have alpha mask wearables that basically, punch holes in the rest of your, in the rest of your model. Are you looking for something beyond what you can do with that? The 1024 thing is in reference to the baking service. Currently you can have higher resolution textures, but anything that gets baked down, your clothing wearables, all gets reduced to 512 as the highest possible texture. So that's what we're looking at increasing the limit on. Yeah, I think we talked about the alpha issue. We're going to need an additional mechanism for hiding the system avatar using a non-alpha mechanism. Do you have a plan for how that's going to work yet, or is that still?
I haven't looked into that stuff yet. Yeah, I'll get to that. I'll get to that hopefully like next week.
My hope is that Linden Lab will add a new alpha layer to the system avatar that is just for the system avatar, and that the original alpha layer will get baked onto the baked texture. That way we can control how much of the system avatar is showing and how much of the mesh avatar is showing. So you could actually mix and match different parts. Like somebody could use a system avatar mesh body. I don't know why they would want to, but then they could use replace different parts. Say they want to replace the breasts, but just the breasts on the system avatar, and that would be possible if you had a system like that.
Yeah, if we did have something like that, we'd have to do it in such a way that wouldn't break all the old content. Lucy, I'm not sure exactly what you're shooting for with your alpha masking, but like the avatar I'm wearing now has an alpha wearable that's basically used to perforate the system avatar, right? So you should be able to wear a texture like that on a mesh avatar as well, and similarly mask out portions of the mesh model. Is that the kind of thing you're shooting for? Okay.
I think that's exactly what she's shooting for, yes. That's not currently possible on Mesh, but it'd be super great to be able to do that.
Yeah, I think that should work. I've never actually tried to apply this kind of texture onto a mesh object, so I'm not positive if you can currently punch holes in them or not. The initial implementation, we're not actually looking to make changes to the rendering side of mesh objects, so if it doesn't understand alphas currently, then that may not work the way that we would hope it would. We'll have to take a look at that.
It seems like that should go hand in hand with the baking project, though, because then you would just bake the alpha into the texture and then apply that texture, I suppose, as an alpha mask texture on the mesh so that you don't see the alpha issue in the rest of the texture.
Right, yeah, the alpha would be part of it would go into the, the result of the bake, and then that's what actually would have the alpha masking effect on the model. Yeah, Lucia, if you can do it on a mesh now, and the baking service is also producing textures with an alpha component, then it should work fine on when we're applying the bakes on mesh to mesh objects. It's all the same thing, really. It's just another way to find your texture, right? Instead of finding your texture as the thing that's associated with a particular face on the mesh, you're finding it as the texture ID of the result of your avatar's bake.
So basically what's being referenced here is exactly what the alpha mask Second Life object does right now to the base avatar, where say you've got a shirt that maybe like cuts across one shoulder diagonally. So you can alpha so that you have that one shoulder invisible and then diagonal across the chest and hide that part of the avatar. Whereas in a mesh body, you can't really do that the same way unless you have access to the original creator's base skin in order to put alpha through that section of the skin. And even then, it doesn't come out perfect because then you get alpha masking issues in the rest of the body where that texture is visible. So what you would want as the shirt creator would be to be able to make a black and white alpha mask and apply that to the mesh so that you could alpha out that one section of skin. The current workaround usually is that bodies are broken up into a lot of different faces so that you can make certain faces of the mesh invisible. And of course that adds to complexity because then you have to upload a lot of different pieces of mesh because each mesh can only have 8 faces. And then your faces might not be cut perfectly to fit every piece of clothing anyway, so it's kind of like your best guessing game.
Yeah, you can also apply a texture via the appliers that they have out now. A lot of the mesh body creators are getting together with I forgot her name, I'm sorry. They created appliers, but my question is in reference to like the tattoo layer stack and the clothing different layer wearables. Would one alpha from one creator affect another alpha from another creator on the different wearables? I don't even know if what I said makes any sense or not.
I believe the alpha is a separate wearable. You can have an alpha wearable that kind of modulates your final texture, punches holes or whatever, but it's not a component of, the alpha isn't actually a component of the textures in the wearables themselves, like the tattoos or whatever. Like if you got a tattoo, the alpha channel of the tattoo is the places where you're going to see through to the layer underneath the tattoo, right? Whereas the alpha in in the alpha wearable is where you're not going to see anything. It's just going to punch a hole in the model. And I don't remember if you can have multiple alpha wearables or if you can only have one. I think you can have more than one and they combine, but I'm not positive about that.
So would it be fair to say that one way of expressing that is we bake all the other layers together and then we apply the alpha layer to the combined thing?
But then what happens to different textures from different creators, content creators? With the alpha, like if I create a tattoo for the arm and it's only one little spot on the arm and the rest of it is an alpha, and then say Kathy makes another tattoo for the arm in a different location and the rest of hers is alpha, would that affect each other?
No, they wouldn't affect each other. It's basically just like with the tattoo layers, it's basically just like a kind of a decal, right? You can have part of the decal is see-through and part of it is opaque, and then you can slap one on top of another and get a combined result. So if the tattoos are affecting different parts of the model, then they're just going to work independently, and the places where neither tattoo is present, you're just going to see through to the skin underneath, right? So I mean that's one way that we use the alpha. There's an alpha channel in the tattoo that says it should be see-through in this area. But then there's also a separate alpha wearable that is used for actually masking out portions of the mesh of the system avatar, and that's the other thing we've been talking about is the the alpha wearable, which I think is the part that Lucia was asking about.
Yes, I do remember how system layers work exactly. And what I mean by other content creators is this baked on mesh is going to be, if it's implemented the way it sounds like you would like it to be, and to replace or cut down on onion avatars, then you're going to have multiple creators creating content for textures, probably. I would think so. So I'm just wondering how that, just how the baking of it would affect the different layers is all. Basically, I guess what my question was.
Right. Well, so what goes on in the baking service is that it takes all of your system avatar wearables. You've got 10 tattoos and 3 shirts and a jacket, and it does. And in the bake service, it loads up all those textures and composites them in a certain order. Right. The tattoos have a defined ordering internally, and they're going to go underneath the shirts, and the shirts also have a defined order. In the system avatar editor, you can actually change the ordering of these things. So once it takes the information about what ordering you requested and just layers those textures one on top of another. So tattoos on the bottom, one over another, and then the shirts over that, and then the jacket over that, and so the whole thing then winds up giving you one resultant texture for your upper body, and that's what the bake service sends to you. It says, hey, your upper body texture is so and so, and then you can just take that, and that's what's actually getting displayed on your system avatar. So with bakes on mesh, that same texture is going to be available to you on your rigged mesh avatar as well. So hopefully that makes sense. I realize the whole system is rather complicated. It's not the only one.
Right, I understand. It's just as long as we're kind of thinking about that is really all I was after, basically. I mean, yeah, some of it did go over my head, but that's okay.
Well, I think once we have an actual project for her to play with, and then an updated bake service. I guess it's just a viewer side change. Actually, we shouldn't need a bake service anyway. once this is available as something to test out, I think it'll be easier to see how it works, and people can check it out.
I just think creators are going to have to be real careful about how they label things and how the other users know that, hey, this wearable fits with this mesh. Maybe that's a good purpose for the branding section of the marketplace.
Yeah, I mean, one interesting thing here is that it's going to be possible to have different wearables that were created for different models or different UV systems. So I mean, you could somebody could make a tattoo that would work on your snake, they do, but then if you tried to use that as a tattoo wearable on the human system avatar, it would look really screwy because it wasn't created with respect to that that set of UV parameters.
Yeah, that's what I mean. But you guys, Linden Lab implemented some kind of branding thing a while back. I looked a little into it, but it didn't so much apply to me. But like for one of these like Maitreya bodies or the Slink body, that seems like a perfect way to use that kind of branding to say, hey, this works with this avatar.
Well, that's something to bring up to the web web users meeting, because I haven't used it recently, but when I did check it out, you put in Maitreya, you can't, that's it. The branding goes away, so there's not an option to add more than one brand. So if I make clothing that fits Maitreya, Belize, Slink, etc., so forth and so on, I can only put in one brand there.
But in a way, that's kind of good though, because technically, how could it work with two different avatars? It can't really.
Well,
unless they were really close.
Mesh clothing
but,
does. Mesh clothing does.
Some do, but yeah.
I mean, fitted mesh originally had hopes to kind of solve the problem of mesh not fitting the avatars correctly. Well, what ended up happening is people started creating these mesh bodies, and so now instead of the 5 standard sizes that somebody came up with, now we're finding that we're creating for we're fitting a mesh clothing to 5 different brands of mesh bodies, plus fitted mesh, plus the 5 standard sizes. I mean, a lot of people have dropped that and they've only done one brand, but then you're cutting down your customer base when you do that. So, Omega Solutions, I believe, has gotten a lot of the content creators together to use the Second Life avatar UV maps for things, so that they can do the script, so that they can apply to, so one thing can apply to more mesh bodies. There is mesh system avatars that are fitted mesh. When you create a new account, you're going to get one of those. The only thing is that people don't really realize what fitted mesh means. I mean, you see it now with a lot of the mesh heads that people are doing. They'll say, well, I don't like the nose, and I'm like, people, you can change the shape of the nose. They just don't seem to get that.
Yeah, I mean, anything that's rigged to the avatar skeleton could potentially be customized. There are some types of sliders in the system avatar that use something called morphs, which actually isn't skeleton driven, and those things don't really translate over into mesh land, but that's just kind of a limitation of the current system. Beck asks about a very high density mesh. Yeah, I mean, well, that's part of what we're hoping to address with the Arctan project, is to come up with costing system that gives people a little better feedback on their complexity of their models. It's always a bit of a fine line. You can't make a change that causes all the existing stuff out there to stop working, but at the same time, you want people to have good feedback about kind of the quality of what they have.
Could you go into a little more detail of what the Icann system is?
Arctan is just a project to try to reassess, land impact and rendering cost. We've added some tools to some instrumentation to the viewer to help us collect more timing data, and we're going to be doing that with a bunch of different types of models and a bunch of different types of hardware, and try to throw all that in a big number cruncher and come up with some kind of more reasonable values for some of this stuff.
The idea is to make the costs we charge, that we assign to things, more accurately reflect the impact they have on people's rendering performance. A lot of the way the formulas were created before was designed to protect the simulator from having to do large data transfers, which, given that we've moved the data transfers away from the simulator, simulators no longer involved in moving textures or meshes around. That's not so important. So we want to reorient the formulas so that they are focused on rendering performance for the end user.
Sounds good.
So hopefully that will mean, something with a high that's expensive to render will have a higher cost, both in terms of its arc impact and in terms of its land impact than it might under the existing formula. Also, there are some disincentives that are wrong. There are some incentives that are wrong, right? If the fact that you can put in an extremely degenerate low-LOD model or no low-LOD model at all and get a lower cost creates an incentive for creating objects that don't have multiple levels of detail. It's better for everybody if things do have multiple levels of detail, because you're not rendering them, you're not spending as much time rendering them when they're far away. So we want to remove that incentive to do poorly structured content.
Now, I know that currently there's the weighting of the land impact is heavily on the mesh, but I think most people understand that it's not always the mesh. I mean, the more faces you have on the mesh, the more textures you can add on the mesh and all that. So it seems to me that texture count is a pretty big factor. Is that going to be taken into account in this new calculation?
Just exactly what the new calculation will end up, how it will be structured, is something that we haven't gotten to yet. What we're trying to do now is we're at the stage of trying to measure things so that we can determine, based on real user measurements, so that we can determine what is most important and what we should assign the highest costs to. But the answer to your question is almost certainly yes. Having too
Currently,
many textures is a big deal.
Currently, the rendering cost incorporates textures, and the land impact doesn't.
Right.
It would require some changes on the back end for us to actually, parse out that texture information and look at it if we wanted to add it to land impact. But yeah, clearly, if we're trying to make an accurate measurement, textures are a big part of that.
Right.
So how does this new calculation affect how we're calculating Animesh? I mean, is it going to have a negative? Are we going to have to wait longer? Or?
To be determined. We really can't say anything about what the new formula will be like. We haven't created it yet. We don't know.
So what you're saying is this new Animesh factor is part of that?
Absolutely. Right. Although we're not going to hold up Animesh for it. We're going to go ahead and ship Animesh, and its formulas will end up getting changed along with everything else.
Yeah, but we will be setting a specific land impact formula for Animesh when it first ships, and that's the thing that I posted to in the forum a day or two back that talks about some of the details of how we're planning to do that. Our final formula when we get to Arctan may or may not be the same as what that's going to be, but at least that's our interim plan for how we're going to get Animesh out the door. Yeah. Creators predict how the land impact will change. Well, it's that's not just a question for Animesh. If you change the land impact of anything, that can potentially be disruptive. So that's one of the things we have to consider as we're deciding how to move forward with that.
So what we'll do with respect to land impact is when we come up with a candidate formula, is we'll put code in the simulator to calculate the new, and probably in the viewer as well, to calculate the new value, but not use it, and continue to calculate the old value, and then log some stats that we can look at through our data mining system that will allow us to say, okay, how many parcels are we going to push to over the limit, and by how much? Because what we may well end up doing is saying, okay, costs have tended to go up by 10%, so we'll just across the board raise the allowed land impact by 15%. And if we do that, then what happens to everything's? And we'll almost certainly also have a grace period during which we say, instead of returning everything, we just send its owner a notice saying, due to changes in land impact, you're over the limit that will be enforced in the near future. You should make adjustments to your content. Hopefully, that's not going to affect too many people.
The way the system works currently, we don't recalculate the land impact for things that are already resed. We calculate the land impact kind of at res time. So I'm not sure if Oz has a plan on that. Are we actually planning to sort of recalculate sort of the land impact for all the existing objects in world, or do you think
there's a way to do that?
Do you think we would just keep keep the stuff that's already out there? Yeah.
The short answer is we don't know. We're extremely aware of the potential for blowing things up by messing with this. We're terrified, but that we're gonna try to find a way through it. Excuse me, I have to run. I'm double booked.
Yeah. Buzz. So let me briefly run through what we're talking about for land impact for Animesh objects. So this, as we say, this is the interim plan. This is when we first ship Animesh, this is how we're planning to do it. And like all the other costs, it could potentially get reevaluated when we get to Project Arctan. So what we're talking about for the initial land impact value is, and this was covered in the forum post that I put up a day or two back. It's going to be primarily based on complexity in terms of triangle counts. So we start out looking at the number of triangles in the most complex LOD of the model, and then because we don't want to discourage people from creating good quality lower LODs. If you have lower LODs but they scale down in a reasonable way, then you're not going to be paying an additional amount based on the complexity of those LODs. So it might be something like each LOD can be up to half the complexity of the one above it, without any additional charge, something like that. And then there's, because there's some overhead to having Animesh objects at all, like even if you have a model with one triangle, the fact that you're carrying around a skeleton and animating it and stuff, does have an impact on the viewer. There's going to be a cost component that applies to all the Animesh objects as well. So you've got sort of the base cost plus a cost related to the highest LOD, plus potentially a cost related to the lower LODs, but only if they're overly complex. So what we're trying to accomplish there is, one thing is which we try to have a cost that somewhat accurately reflects the cost of the Animesh objects, but also doesn't discourage people from creating good LODs for their models, which is one of the things that we've unfortunately found that the current scheme has the effect of doing. We don't have the numbers yet. It's basically what we have is a scheme for what the formula is going to look like, and I'm in the process of collecting information about content that's already out there, what the line impact looks like for that, measuring the performance impact of Animesh objects, and throwing all of that into hopefully a less complex calculation than what we're going to be doing with Arctan, but still we've got to come up with some sort of weights to apply to things for all of that. Right. So yeah, as I say, we don't have the numbers yet. We have a plan for what the formula is going to look like, and I'm in the process of trying to collect the performance data to help us get reasonable numbers for this stuff. And know the base cost for each one is not going to be 200. $100. What are we bidding? Do I hear 33? Yeah, so we'll keep you posted on that. I'm hoping to get this stuff put together reasonably soon, but I've also been working on some bugs, so it all pulls out of the same time pool.
Well, I'll just say it's going to be an interesting year.
Well, I hope so. Hopefully, mostly in a good way. People have been working on new Animesh stuff lately. I'm seeing some models this meeting that I hadn't seen before, but I don't know if they're specifically being done for Animesh or not.
Everyone's making a horse.
Of course, of course.
Wait, what? .anim files are being blocked?
I don't know anything about anim files being blocked from uploading. What?
Aki in local chat.
Blocked from uploading via the animation uploader?
I might be wrong, but I feel like they've always been blocked on Linden Labs viewer, but just not on Firestorm.
I don't know if I'm trying to upload an anim file in the Linden viewer. I just go to build, upload animation, and pick an anim file. If that doesn't work, send me an example. I'll take a look at it.
Yeah. So normally, I mean, that's the behavior that I would have expected, Veer. But apparently, now I'm going to try and open the uploader and okay. So I'm going to take a screen cap here real quick, and I'll paste in the Giazo link.
Unless something's happened in the last couple days. I uploaded an NM file a couple days ago.
I just loaded an anim file with my Animesh viewer, so I don't know. It maybe is a problem with a particular file or something.
Well, I'm able to run the file itself if I just use bulk upload, so I'm not sure whether there's anything specific to the animation uploader that's different.
That makes me wonder if there's maybe an issue where it's like referencing an unknown joint and we're not doing the right checking on the bulk upload that we are doing with the anim upload. Could you send me the file?
Sure.
Okay, that'd be terrific. Thanks. So if you give me that, I'll take a look and see if I can figure out what's going on with that.
Yeah, you shouldn't get a window like that anyways, because you wouldn't get that with an NM file. You would just get.
Well, see, that is my expectation, right? I've never seen this particular screen come up with an animation file. My expectation would just be that it would upload, right?
Is it possible that because the name is a capital .anim, it's trying to feed it to the BVH uploader instead of the anim uploader?
I can try renaming it.
Yeah, give it a lowercase anim and see if it treats it. It may just be doing like an explicit match for, if name is .anim, then do one thing, and if it's .bvh, then or else do something else, something like that. I don't know. But yeah, if you send it to me, I'll take a look.
Has there been any more internal discussion about poly counts and land impact for Animesh?
Yeah, that's what I was just talking about a minute ago. That the for the land impact formula we're planning to use, it's going to be based primarily on the poly count of the model plus a component for the basically as a charge for having a skeleton and associated animations.
Meant like, are you narrowing down the range of max poly count you want to use and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, basically what we've been coming up with so far is sort of what the formula is going to look like, and then I've been collecting data on existing models and looking at the performance impact of those. So I don't have the numbers on it yet, but we're in the process of trying to pin that down now. A hard cap for worn Animesh. I mean, since there's a triangle count check at when you're creating the Animesh objects, I think that would apply even for worn Animesh, even though it wouldn't actually check the land impact at the time that you attached it.
Oh, Carrie wanted me to ask if we could have two NMS attachments. Because, people want twin babies too.
Won't someone think of the babies? I haven't looked at that yet. Currently, we still have the limit of one, but we can talk about that. Yeah, we'll see. I think we haven't really looked at the arc for Animesh yet, but that is probably also going to try to factor in the triangle counts more explicitly than the current formula does. Is full attach points a possibility for later on for Animesh? It is a possibility for later on. That's one of the things that we would want to look at for kind of the Animesh 2 project. We've talked about doing a follow-on that would support more of the kinds of customization that people like for NPCs. Being able to support the shapes and some other frequently requested things. I think the most likely time we would look into attachments would be in the context of that project. But for the initial Animesh release, no, they won't have attachments. So currently, particles are defined relative to attachment points. So if you don't have attachment points, then you can't make them go where you want. Is that the concern? And light origin, okay.
Veer, do you know if we have a JIR for that, or should Lucia open a JIR for that?
For the attachment points?
Yes.
I think we probably do have one for that. Just a second. I think think Lucy had filed a couple of things about visually rigging the sitter to an animesh skeleton bone and visually rigging the legacy prim to an animesh skeleton bone. Oh, set link rigging. It seems like it's sort of along the same line as pseudo attachments. But yeah, if you want to file something that talks about it in other contexts, then that would be good. Okay. Okay, thanks for the Jira, Horley. Thing about the particle emitters. All right. Well, I guess that covers it for this week. So we'll keep you posted. You know, I think we're closer to having an actual end impact formula, but it's not quite ready yet. You know, there'll also be a project viewer coming out the next week or two that includes the merge from the latest viewer release update and should pick up a couple of bug fixes as well. So we'll let you know about all of those once they're ready. Yeah, LOD bug not yet. I'm currently working on that, but probably won't do a PV update until we have a fix, so it probably will. Yeah, I mean, as far as I can tell, it goes back a ways. It may be easier to work around in older viewers, but it isn't actually absent from older viewers. Yeah, there's a thing where if you kind of zoom in and out on objects when they're selected, you can get them stuck in this weird low LOD state, so it's kind of a mess. Oh, Firestorm fixed that? You happen to know how? Ooh, do tell. Sorry, force LOD function? Yeah. Okay, well, yeah, if there's something to force it into a state, then that's, I guess that would be a fix of sorts, but the idea would be to try to set it so that it's computing the correct LODs automatically. Let's ask for update on latest viewers. Yeah, I really would not encourage having an option to just force an LOD because that's going to get abused extensively. Anyway, I don't think I have an update on viewers right now, but I'll keep you guys posted next time we have a PV update. Oh, Horley, thanks. Not permanent, okay. Okay, Horley, thanks for the link. I'll take a look at that. Yeah, unfortunately, the chairs we have here have the crumpling across the room problem. All right. Well, I will see you guys. I think we've got. We actually don't have anything canceling the next couple of meetings, or at least the next one meeting. So, I guess I will see you next week.
Awesome. Thanks, Veer.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one. Yeah. Oh, okay. Thanks for the animation link. Yeah, having a way to force an LOD for preview purposes is a nice feature.
Oh yeah, I'm looking at it. It's really cool. Oh, bye, Veer.
Right.
Whirly, you were into the whole mirror thing, weren't you?